Once we've downloaded Python, or even if we're just checking to see if Python's installed, of course, all we have to do is go to a command line prompt, as we've seen, execute Python on Microsoft Windows, or Python 3 on just about every other operating system known to mankind, and take a look at what's being shown. In this case, we see we're running Python 3.4.3, which isn't too surprising because we're using Windows XP. So for the purposes of this primer, make sure we're running at least version 3.6. And once again, make sure we're using either Python or Python 3, depending upon what operating system we're running. So once we have Python installed, some of the terms we should be familiar with is whether we're using scripts or whether we're running REPL. Whenever we're using Python, we have the ability to activate our interpreter. And once we activate our interpreter, of course, we'll see those 3 greater than signs, which means we're being asked by Python for something to read. Entering something, of course, the next thing Python will do is use a built-in called eval to evaluate what we've entered before checking to see if we've typed either in quit or exit or one of the ways of exiting REPL. And if we have, of course, we will exit the REPL mode and we're done. Otherwise, Python will print what it has evaluated for us on the console before looping back to read our input once again. And when we look at the acronym for read, evaluate, print, and loop, we see we have defined the REPL mode. So as you might expect, the REPL mode works the same on idle as it does, or our graphical user interface, or GUI, as it does on the command line interface, or textual user interface, or TUI. Now, at this point in time, we should probably note that when it comes to naming our things in Python, that there are rules and there are suggestions. The rules are that a variable name or a function name or a class name can either start with a letter or an underscore character, but none of these names can start with a number. So once we start our variables with an underscore or a character, we can then use any alphanumeric character, either A through Z, uppercase or lowercase, 0 through 9, as well as the underscore. And things are indeed case-sensitive in Python. And those are the rules. And we'll cover the suggestions later on when we review the Python enhancement proposal, PEP8, later on in this PyQuest primer. Activating idle yet again on the exact same machine, you'll notice that I am indeed using another version of Python. And you'll discover that because Python is a free and open standard, lots of people will include Python as part of their program. And if you search for Python on your operating system, you'll usually find more than one version of Python installed, even if we can't access it from the IDE. Searching for python.exe on Windows, you notice that I have several Python interpreters installed, and you'll probably find a lot more when you use the find command under Debian or any one of your Linux operating systems if you have more than the default operating system installed. So another nice thing about using the REPL mode in the version of Python we're using is whenever we don't assign something to a variable, we can use the underscore to show what has been defined. And no matter whether we're defining strings, integers, or floats, using the underscore will return whatever we've defined if we haven't assigned it to a variable. Of course, the way we assign something to a variable is simply to use a name, in this case with an underscore, which is considered to be pretty peppy, and we'll be talking more about the Python enhancement proposals, or PEP8, later on. And when we assign something to a variable, we'll notice that even when we're using a built-in function, when we're using a string, we can execute an operation even before our variables have been assigned. One of the handy ways to clear the lines off your screen in Python is simply to use the print statement and a special encoding known as an escape sequence to put together a new line, then to multiply that new line by a number. In this case, we'll simply use 30 to print 30 new lines, which effectively will print some new lines on our screen, effectively clearing away any distractions that we might see. Another nice thing about Python, of course, is we could go up, as we did to our previous REPL input, hit enter and print things again. And in this case, if I wanted to print a question mark on a new line, I simply put the question mark before the \n or the escape sequence for a new line, so as to print any character we want, in this case, 30 question marks. Another interesting thing to note about Python is that our variables are reusable. And if I simply queried my var, I'll see I had the capitalized version of Nagy. But if I were to just set my var to an integer, we see that my var was now set to the integer. And using our type command, we can see that, of course, rather than a string, my var would be set to an int. So while we now know that whenever we have a string, we can hit a period, and in idle, we can see a list of everything that's associated with that object, we can do the same thing with an instance of an integer. In this case, now my var is an integer. And by hitting period now, rather than saying things like uppercase and lowercase, we have other member functions that are associated with the instance of an integer, and we could indeed use a help subsystem to learn more about any member function, in this case, the built-in function bit length, that's assigned to an integer, as we see here. If you haven't done so already, now would be a real good time to take out your newly installed version of Python and get some hands-on workout with an ad hoc activity, because practice does indeed make perfect, and software development is a very bad spectator sport. Certainly if you want to make money as a software developer or do cool projects on your own. So take a moment, activate your idle session, and use a help system to take a look at the help available at all the functions associated with the object. In this case, the upper member function associated with the string, as we see here. At a minimum, I'd be sure to be able to define strings, integers, floats, as well as Booleans, so as to take a look at everything that is associated with a string, an integer, a float, or a Boolean, so as to use the help system to learn more about each and every one of these four basic types.